This is the holy gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to St. John. Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." And they said to him, "We'll go with you." And they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, you have no fish, have you?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked, and jumped into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 yards off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come, have breakfast." Now, none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." And he said to him the 3rd time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter felt hurt because he had said to him the 3rd time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and to go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After this, he said to him, "Follow me." The gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. So about 30 years ago or so, someone invited me, my first experience at the Episcopal Church, to a Christmas Eve service. I know I've told you all this before, so I went to that Christmas Eve service, and it was very moving and special, and I really liked it enough that a year later I decided to go back for the next Christmas Eve service, and I did that for about 10 years, Christmas Eve. I loved Christmas Eve. And then around that time, I had moved to Oregon, and I found a new church to spend on Christmas Eve. And then one year I thought to myself, you know what? I think I'm going to go on Easter too. I hear that's a big day at the church as well. And so I did. And as after that, at some point, I decided that I really wanted to go to church regularly, and I wanted to be baptized and become a Christian. And so I did that, and I got baptized, and it was moving. It was on the Easter Vigil, and I was confirmed at Pentecost the same year. And then, like lots of people who are sort of new to things, I wanted to do everything. And I was an usher, and I was a lector, and I was a Eucharistic minister, and I did youth group, and I was on the technology committee, and whatever. If they asked me to do it, like, sign me up. But around that same time, we had moved across town. So the church wasn't really close by anymore. In fact, it was like a long way away. It was as though the church was in DeWitt and we had moved to Camillus, right? And it was a long way. And Portland's a big city, so it was even a little further away. And I had to take a train to get there. So it was like an hour train ride there and an hour train ride back. And I was there for like 3 hours at a time. And so it became a long day. And that was before like I got paid as my job. So spending church all day on Sunday was a new experience for me. And I got a little burned out because, of course, I had to go by like 8 Episcopal churches to get from where I lived to the church I was going to. And I experienced, I guess, what you would call burnout. I did too much, honestly. And so I decided I was not going to go to that church. In fact, I wasn't going to go to church at all anymore. I just had to figure this whole thing out. And I wasn't sure, am I really an Episcopalian? Because it's not like I'd like sampled them or tried them out. Like some random person invited me to a church on Christmas Eve. And like my whole faith life was based on that. And so I thought maybe I'll try out some different things. And so I took one step to each side, and I went to a Methodist church and a Catholic church. And they were both very nice, and I enjoyed them, but neither one of them really felt like home. And so I decided, yeah, I probably really am an Episcopalian. And there was this church near where I lived that I'd ridden by on my bike many times, and it was not a particularly appealing church. In fact, it was kind of like ugly as churches go. It was like, I don't know, but there was something about it that made me want to go there. And so finally one Sunday I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to sit in the back and I'm going to do church and then I'm going to leave. I'm not even going to do coffee hour. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go to church. And I did that, except of course I found that all the empty seats were in the front. So I actually sat fairly close to the front. And after about a month or so going to this church, St. Gabriel's, I went up for communion like I always do. And that's this church, the way it was built, there was behind the altar were glass windows. It was all glass. And outside of that was the memorial garden. There was like this beautiful ancient yew tree and then flowers and things. And that's, where parishioners, their cremated remains were kept. And it was this beautiful scene. And up above, high up was a big window and the light shining down. It was very moving. And I went up to communion and I sat back down in my seat, and it's about where Sharon is sitting now for that church. And I just had this overpowering sense of the presence of Jesus. It was as though Jesus was like sitting next to me, and I had this feeling, I didn't see Jesus sitting next to me, or anything, but it felt as though Jesus was sitting next to me. And I had this feeling as if I was in the presence of something divine. And this feeling washed over me, of feeling loved and that I belonged. And those are two pieces of woundedness in my own life. And so my deepest hurts were being filled by this presence of Jesus and this experience of the Eucharist, of the bread and the wine. And I kid you not, I was sitting in church and I'm like, I got tears coming out of my eyes. I'm like, I'm not crying. And I know some of you have experienced something like that too. And so and it was about a week after that, I think, that they had a newcomers reception, after church. If you've joined the church in the last few months, if you want to stay, we'd love to get to know you a little better. And I ended up as the senior warden of that parish. And that was where my sponsoring parish for ordination. So the whole sitting in the back or front in this case and doing nothing really didn't work out that well, but it was all started. In fact, the reason I'm here today is not so much because I was invited to Christmas Eve service and did 10 years and all that, but because in that moment of the Eucharist, in that really unattractive church, and it really still is kind of an unattractive church, I felt the presence of Jesus. And I knew in my heart of hearts that Jesus was a real presence active in my life. Everything kind of really starts at that place. And I look at this story today and I understand that, because here's the disciples and they're out fishing. I don't really know why they're fishing naked, but anyway, they're out fishing in the middle of the night and they're not catching anything. And I could totally relate to that. And they're coming to shore and they see a figure on the shore. They can't quite make out who it is. It's early in the morning. And this figure says to them, you haven't caught anything, have you? And they're like, no. He's like, try over there. And they're like, throw their nets, and they got so many fish, they don't know what to do. And this is what Jesus does for us, that Jesus meets us and finds us when we're open to Jesus and fills the things within us that are empty. Whether it's our nets or our hearts, Jesus fills what is empty and fills it in a way that really nothing else can. And then he invites them to shore, and they have breakfast of bread and fish, which is not really my favorite breakfast, but I think that's probably what they ate. And in that moment when they break the bread together, they know in their heart of hearts that they are in the presence of the divine, and that all of the hurts and brokenness that they have experienced are being filled. And that's why we continue to celebrate as the central focus of our gathering, the Eucharist. That in this meal, and it's, it's like a little wafer and like a half a squirt of wine. It's not much of a meal, I know, but it is a symbolic meal. And I know from my own experience and from looking into the eyes of so many people that I've given communion to in the last 10 years, that it is meaningful and powerful, and that Jesus continues to show up and be present in some mysterious way that I can't quite describe in this sacrament that we share together, this meal, this Eucharist, where we are laid bare and made whole through the presence of God. And so this thing that we do is powerful, and it's important, and it's meant to be shared. Like all good parties, it's meant to have those who aren't here yet to be invited in, so that they too can know that whatever is empty in their hearts and in their souls can be filled up, overfilled, brimming over the top with the love of Jesus that we share in the breaking of the bread.